Hi, my name is Louise.
And hi, I'm Emma.
And you're listening to Murder or Myth,
the true crime podcast where not everything is true.
The aim of the game is to find out whether the story is actually a murder or if it's just a myth.
Now, let's get started.
So, for this week, we have a bonus episode, Halloween special.
Halloween special. First annual Halloween special.
Exciting.
Very much so.
And both me and Emma are going to be telling a story.
So it's a 2-for-1 episode.
2-for-1.
If you will.
We've really got the Halloween vibes going. We've got a fire lit, so if you do hear some crackling in the background,
you're just going to add to it. Yeah.
So, do you want to start us off, Emma?
Yeah, so I'm telling the first story. So I'm going to tell the first story of today's episode, and it is the Candyman Killer.
Okay.
So Timothy O'Brien died on Halloween 1974, aged 8.
Okay.
Right? Set the scene. The day began as any other Halloween night for the O'Briens. Timothy went trick-or-treating around his neighborhood of Pasadena, Texas, with his father Ronald and sister Elizabeth. The three were joined by a neighbor and his 2 kids. The group just walked around their own neighborhood and collected sweets. So they landed at a house where no one answered the door. The kids grew impatient and ran ahead to the next house. However, Ronald hung back and met the group a few moments later. He handed each of the kids pixie sticks. So that's just a candy that they have out in America,
candy,
yeah. And so he gave each kid a pixie stick, so there was 4 kids there. He had said that the house that no one answered, someone came out and gave it to him. They later got back home and finished trick-or-treating, and Ronald gave the last pixie stick to a child that he had recognised from their church. So before the children went to bed, Timothy had asked his father if he could have some of the candy that he gathered. According to Ronald, he chose the pixie stick. He opened the tube and ate some of the flavoured powder. Complaining it tastes bitter, his father got him some Kool-Aid to wash it down. Shortly thereafter, Timothy had an intense stomach pain and began vomiting, which was followed by convulsions. Ronald had held him as he went limp, and the child died en route to the hospital less than an hour after the pain began.
Oh my god.
Yeah, very sad. So Timothy's death was causing an immense panic in the area as parents turned in their child's candy for fear it had been poisoned.
Okay.
So they started giving it back to police stations, and it was kind of like hysteria. So the autopsy came back and confirmed the poisoning as the cause of death. Timothy had ingested a fatal dose of potassium cyanide. The police quickly located the other pixie sticks that he had given out to the other children that were with him and the one child that was given to at the end of the night. They had got all but one, and they tested them to see if they had similar poison within them. And it was noted that each of those ones that was found had 3 to 4 times the dose needed to kill an adult.
Okay.
So the packaging was tampered with and was clearly stapled back together. So they kind of knew it was a intentional tampering. The parents of the last child that had got a pixie stick panicked as they couldn't find that candy anywhere, and they had found it in their child's room as they were sleeping, held in their arms, and they just couldn't open the packaging. So there could have easily had been another victim of this crime. The police quickly set about trying to find out whether the story was bit of a misspeak there. The police quickly set out about trying to find where the sweets came from and asked Ronald to specify what house he had gotten them from. So police grew suspicious when he couldn't remember which one he got the candy from, but had only walked around 2 streets on Halloween night. Yeah. So he eventually led them to a house where no one had answered, and they said that they came from that house. He claimed that he had only seen a man's arm through a cracked door and took the candy from that man.
Through a cracked door?
Yeah.
That's so dodge. And also, would he not notice that, him or, anyone else not notice that the packaging had been stapled back together? I feel like if it's a sweet wrapper, you kind of...
Yeah, but he had just given it straight to the kids. Would the kids have necessarily known that was wrong?
Yeah, but would a kid not see, if it had been stapled back together, or Ron, any of the parents? But yeah, I guess, I know what you mean. No one's checking.
So you're just on getting sweets for Halloween night and you just were throwing shit in your bag.
Yeah, but when you're
And then you
eating
didn't care.
it, is what I mean. But no, did none of the other kids eat them?
None of the other kids ate them.
Okay.
Only Ronald's own son. The man who had lived at that house did not get home until 11 p.m. and was quickly ruled out as a suspect, as like a load of other people corroborated his story.
Mm-hmm.
So police investigated Ronald more closely and found out that he had over $100,000 in debt, and he was about to get fired from his job as he was suspected of theft. He had recently began taking out multiple life insurance policies on his family as well, especially the kids. In the space of 6 months, he took out 3 policies on each child, totaling to $60,000. The police put together that he had laced the candy to gather money and gave it out to other kids to cover up the murder. He maintained his innocence and never confessed. He was arrested for the murder only 5 days after the killing had happened and sentenced to death by a jury after an hour. He had pleaded not guilty to all the charges, and in 1984 he was executed by lethal injection in Huntsville, Texas. So that's the story of Ronald O'Brien, the Candyman killer.
What year around was this, sorry?
1974. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the end of my story.
So death penalty would still be around. Okay. Thoughts? It's quite sinister.
Okay.
Yeah. It's very sad.
That's how our stories tend to be.
So true. They're true crime based. I think it's a murder.
You think it's a murder?
Mm-hmm.
Final answer?
Final answer.
It is a murder.
It is a murder.
It is a murder. Yeah. This is kind of a well-known one. I would have heard of this before as well, actually.
As had I.
Had you?
Yeah.
Were you not going to say, Louise? You weren't going to come clean?
Say it till the end.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, will she know this already? But anyways.
Maybe. No risk, no reward, I guess.
That's the end of my story. So yeah. You got it right, Louise. Congrats.
Thank you. Okay, shall we move on to my story?
So time for your story.
Okay.
The double episode.
The double episode. Exciting. So, for my story this week, my Halloween theme is witches.
Witches?
Yeah, and this is the story of the Pendle witch trial of 1612. So, this trial involved 12 people who were accused of witchcraft and the murder of 10 people in the town of Lancaster in England. So Lancaster has since been granted the title of a city, but at the time for a town it had quite a dark history. Mm-hmm. Very small enough town, with Lancaster Castle being used as a prison until 2011.
Okay.
So Lancaster is known for having the most hangings in England outside of London.
Right.
And this is how it gained the nickname the Hanging Town. So the term witch at the time was not always like negatively associated. So some people would like outright say, I'm a witch.
They wanted to be witches?
Yeah, because it was like some people would fake it because it was associated with money.
Oh.
Like sorcery and like healing powers. Like herbal medicines, like protective charms.
Yeah, got you.
Kind of like good magic, bad magic type of thing. So yeah, it would be common for a person, mostly older women in the town, to be known or to say that they were a witch and have that as their source of income. And then the rest of the family would also be like connected or associated with witchcraft, like it ran in families. So during the early 1600s in Lancaster, there were 2 rivalry witchcraft families, from which 6 of the trialed people in this Pendle witch trial came from. And both were led by women in their 80s. So for around 50 years before the trial, Elizabeth Southerns, the head of one of these families, was known locally as a witch, but it wasn't until March 1612 when her granddaughter Alison placed a curse on a man who suffered a fall and stroke only minutes after their encounter.
Okay.
So she placed a curse on him, and then he immediately fell ill. So this man was walking through the town, and she asked him for pins, which were known to be used sometimes during spells, witchcraft spells.
Right.
So maybe he knew that she was a witch, maybe he didn't want to give her pins, but he refused, and she cursed him, and then felt intense guilt over the strength of her powers, that she tended to his bedside begging for forgiveness.
Okay, so she kind of like unreverse it.
Yeah, she's trying to unreverse it, but she felt really guilty. And this remorsefulness was what commence the family's involvement in the trial, as Alison was essentially admitting guilt to the man's injuries that she felt.
Oh, okay.
That it was her fault. So allegations of the witchcraft murderers were said to come from the families, as they may have been rivals, and one young girl sat as a witness to the trial of her mother, brother and sister. So basically when one family got caught, they were saying the other family was doing things. And that's how everyone got involved.
All got caught up in it.
There was another family, Jane and her son John, who were also part of the accused after Jane placed a curse on a man that had kind of disrespected her family. So it was common practice in the rest of Europe for witches to be burned at the stake. However, the punishment in England was hanging. So all but 2 of the witches in this case were tried at Lancaster Castle on August 18th and 19th. Janet Prestone was tried in York Assizes on July 27th, as she was local to York and was found guilty on account of one murder by witchcraft of a local landlord. The last accused sadly died during imprisonment, and of the 11th who went to trial, 9 women and 2 men, 10 were found guilty and were executed by hanging, and only 1 was found not guilty and was freed.
Okay.
So that's the case of the Pendle witch trial.
Pendle witch trial, okay. Was it trial by jury or a judge?
No, you had judges.
Judges, okay.
But more than one, yeah. Like a host of judges, would you call it? I don't know.
Like a judge group.
A judge group.
Okay. It's super detailed, but also vague, so I'm slightly confused about that. It's so in-depth, and I was thinking it was a myth, because as well was a little bit kind of just cursed a man because he said disrespected whatever.
As he should, though.
So I am a little bit stumped, shall we say, but I'm gonna go with murder.
Final answer?
Final answer. Murder.
It's a murder.
It's a murder. Okay.
Yeah. There was a huge amount of detail in this, so that was kind of the summary of it. But yeah, I don't know if she cursed him, if she the disrespected. I ended the sentence with, "We're also part of the accused after Jane placed a curse on," and then never went back to that.
So fair.
So I was just like, let's come up with something on the spot. I have to keep the story going. But
not too bad.
Yeah,
there was a lot of too many characters. I was like, if you wrote this, you would keep it simpler. There was like 3 families, a bunch of witches. When you said the 11th person didn't get trial, I was like, that's a lot of people for a myth.
Interesting. Noted.
Note to self for next time. But yeah. Okay, so
2 murders.
2 murders, 2 correct guesses. Too easy.
Too easy. Hope you guys enjoyed the bonus episode.
Yeah.
Maybe someday they'll turn into us doing, if we have the time, like
us
2
doing
episodes
murders.
No. 2 episodes in one.
Oh yes, that would make sense.
Yeah.
And then every episode could be like a little game. See who wins, see
That's
who loses. Get really competitive with it. No, I think that was a very good Halloween special, and come back next year for another one.
Agreed. Happy Halloween, everyone.
Happy Halloween. Spooky Halloween.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to like and subscribe.
Join us next week for another thrilling adventure.
Find us on all streaming platforms.
We got that wrong.
In this week's episode.
Yeah, but I should have done that before.
Oh, okay.
Yep, just start again.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to like and subscribe.
On this week's episode, we told 2 murder stories, and each host correctly guessed it was a murder.
Find us on all streaming platforms.
Join us next week for another thrilling adventure.
Remember, it's myth until proven murder. Slay. That was a lot.
Good job.
I liked the timed good job. We should have done the teaser. Slick.